As I mentioned, we tried to do this several months ago. I got in some serious back trouble, which is a whole lot better. I'll be fine, but not quite 100% yet. And we planned this 6 8 weeks ago, thinking what could possibly happen on June 2nd. Thinking the Warriors now, and Biden's giving a speech on gun control, and we have hot weather. So we got who we got. I'm glad you're all here. I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank Andy and Jude and Rosie and Theo for inviting me to do this again, and also for the great window display they put outside with a poster and some of my model cars. My book is not on Amazon. You cannot buy it on Amazon. You can only buy it here or through some ads I have in newsletters from the car clubs that I belong to. I believe in supporting local business in Sonoma. If I can't buy it here, maybe I'll use Amazon, otherwise I won't. I believe in supporting small business. After buying and selling 100 cars and spending 40 years in the car business, my several friends encouraged me to write a book about it. So I did. It gave me something to do during the pandemic. The book is 240 pages long. It has cars from the $75 Model A Ford I was given for my 16th birthday to several more Model A's and Model T's, Cadillacs, Porsches, 4 MGTCs, one of which is on the cover of the book, a Messerschmitt, a Pacer, a $6 Corvair, which we'll talk about, an Acura NSX, a Mini Cooper S, a $1 million Toyota. Yes, I owned a $1 million Toyota. Several Citroens, a couple of Morgans, even a Rolls Royce. I got to own a Rolls Royce way back when. They're all in the book, plus scores more. All right. I grew up in Southern California, the car culture capital of the country, and became absorbed in all things automotive at a very early age. I started collecting model cars when I was 5 years old. I still do. I have about 300 model cars in my office. I've had more fun with the models. They're a whole lot cheaper to maintain than the real cars. I had early aspirations to be a car dealer. I thought that would be great. That's what I wanted to do. I had bought and sold 4 cars before I was out of high school, went to college, graduated on a Sunday. I started selling cars on the next Monday at a Pontiac Rolls-Royce Fossil Vega dealer in Newport Beach. Anybody knew about a Fossil Vegas?
Heard of it.
Few people, all right. I spent some time as the factory rep for Buick. I spent some time as a Porsche Audi factory rep, and eventually went to Toyota Motor Sales, where I was the national sales training manager for 10 years, and also the original curator of the Toyota Museum, buying and selling old Toyotas, having them restored for their display. When I left in 1970, whatever it was, we had about a dozen cars. Now Toyota has moved to Texas, and they have over 100 cars in the museum, but I'm the one that started it, and we'll talk a little more about that later. After 10 years at Toyota, I moved to American Honda, national office in Torrance, California by LA. I was national sales training manager there also, and spent some time in sales promotion, merchandising, dealer incentives, and also I was the original museum curator for American Honda. I worked for Honda for 20 years. I flew over 1 million miles on United Airlines, covering 49 states on business. We missed Alaska. When we moved here, Susanna and I took a cruise to Alaska, so we've been in all 50 states. I have been in all 50 states. Susanna and I retired in 2006 from Manhattan Beach to Sonoma. Way back when I was about 20 years old, I wrote a list of the 10 cars I wanted to own before I died. Here's the list. See if you recognize any of them. This would be in 1962-63 when I wrote this. MGTC, the car on the cover. I've owned 4 of them. Fiat Jolly, which is a little teeny Fiat with wicker seats and a canvas top that was primarily used for beaches and kind of rare. And I had one of those. A Model A station wagon, Model A Ford station wagon. I've had 3. The last one I had was probably one of the best in the country, and we'll talk about that car. Next one's a Ferrari. Next one's a Citroen 2CV. I've had 4 Citroen 2CVs, a Mahari, And I now own a Citroen 2CV Truckette, which is, they made 5 million 2CV sedans. They made 4,000 truckettes. So I have a very rare little truck, and it just happens to be for sale if anybody's interested. 1936 Ford Club Cabriolet. That's the convertible with the back seat. It's not a roadster. And you wonder why I wanted that car. That's the car my parents got married in 1938. My dad had a 36 Club Cabriolet, and I found one. We'll talk about that car. And in the book is a picture of my parents on their wedding day with the car. A Rolls Royce. When you're 20 years old, sure, someday I'll have a Rolls Royce. Well, I got to. We'll talk about the Rolls. A Mini Cooper S, one of the great British sports cars ever made. Bought a Mini Cooper S, and I ended up selling that car to BMW of North America. When the big Mini came out, they needed a small Mini to put at the auto shows to compare the two cars. So my car went from Los Angeles to the East Coast. They bought a little car back there, bring it back here, and I don't know what happened to it, but I'm sorry I sold it. A Toyota 2000 GT. Some of you have never heard of a 2000 GT. That's the one on the poster most people miss. Toyota made 350 of them. 50 of those cars came to America. And when I worked at Toyota, we had one on display, and I had the opportunity to buy one later on, so I did. And the last is a 1959 Cadillac with the big Buck Rogers fins on the back. I wanted one of those. I've owned 9 of the 10 cars just mentioned. I've never owned a Ferrari for a whole lot of reasons, one of which I don't have the money. So we'll discuss the cars in just a minute, but besides the cars in the book, you will read about some interesting and famous people I've dealt with that crossed my path. These include J. Frank Duryea. Anybody know who Frank Duryea was? 1893, he invented the American car before Henry Ford. Henry Ford made it in 1896. We'll talk about Duryea. Arthur Frommer wrote Europe on $5 a day. I met him in Amsterdam. I was in Europe for a year or almost a year. I took a year out of college, went to Europe and wandered around, and ended up meeting Arthur Frommer in Amsterdam, which were both shipping cars back to America. And I told him what my story was, and he wrote in the book, and there's a copy of the picture in the book, please don't write Europe on 60 cents a day, because I was living in my car, living in youth houses, bumming off people I knew, and he was concerned about going out of business. I don't think so. He didn't know business. Richie Ginther, the famous race car driver. I was involved with him when I worked for Porsche Audi. Andy Griffith of the TV show, Andy Griffith Show. Bill Hara of Hara's Car Collection in Reno, Nevada. I met Bill Hara when I was in high school at flea markets. Pat Sajak of Wheel of Fortune. You will see a picture of me and Pat Sajak. Won't tell you why. You have to buy the book to know about it. And the last is Bugsy Siegel. Bugsy Siegel, the gangster that started in Las Vegas. The red car is reputedly, original owner was Virginia Hill. Virginia Hill was Bugsy's girlfriend. She had beautiful legs. Her nickname was Flamingo. And the Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas is supposedly named after her legs. The car was registered in her name, but at the Beverly Hills mansion where Bugsy was murdered in 1947. That car's been in the parade here 4th of July, 6 or 7 times. All right, so now let's talk about a few of the cars in the book before I take some questions or comments. First car was given to me at 16, Model A Ford, 2-door sedan. I kind of knew I was getting it. I have an older brother. I did, he's since passed away. I have an older brother who got a Model A Ford for his 16th birthday. When he was 12, he got a new Schwinn bicycle. So I knew when I was 12, I'm getting a new Schwinn bicycle. So that was kind of that. I had the Model A a couple of years. I sold it to a man probably in his mid-70s and his grandson. He was raising the boy. They drove the Model A from Pasadena to Idaho in June. They took the 2-door body off, put a roadster body on it during the summer, and drove the car back to California. And they came by the house and showed me. It was a great experience for both of them, but I don't want to drive a Model A from here to Idaho and back, whatever it was. The next car was a 42 Packard hearse. if you're 17 or 18 years old, you really think that's cool. And my parents were friends of a dealer called the Yackel Brothers in California, LA, and they had several dealerships. He was the biggest Oldsmobile dealer in LA. He had a Cadillac store and a Chrysler store and other things. He's the only car dealer I ever knew that ran for a mayor of a big city, and Bob Yackel got 150,000 votes, came in second place in the city of Los Angeles. So he was a well-respected car dealer. Anyway, I ended up, this Packard came on trade, and Bob Yackel called my dad up and said, "Do you think your boy would be interested in this hearse?" And my dad said, "I'm sure he would be, but I would not be." I bought the hearse. We took the hearse to the high school Christmas dance. It was full hearse with casket and curtains and the whole thing. It was just a wonderful, wonderful, beautiful old Packard. I sold it to a painter in Pasadena who took the casket out and threw away and put all his paint gear in it. All the ladders and all the stuff, ruined the upholstery. Car was around for a couple of years. Anyway, that's Packard hearse. 1929 Model A Ford station wagon. I've had 3 of them. The last one I found in Hemmings magazine, the car magazine, and it was a pretty good ad. It had a 707 area code. The price was too high, so I cut the ad out and put it in my desk drawer. And I found it a month or two later, yeah, I'm going to call about this Model A station wagon. And I called the guy, and it turned out to be in Santa Rosa. His land was right behind Land Country Safari. He had the next piece of land. The next piece of land was Steve Young, the football player, no relation to me. So I go to see the car, and he says, I have a problem. I said, "What's that?" He says, "My wife and I are getting divorced. The house has been sold. I'm moving to Peru in 10 days. I need to sell the car." I said, "Well, your price is out of my league." He says, "Give me an offer. I've got to sell the car." This was a car that came into first place in every Model A, but it hadn't been driven anywhere in 6 or 7 years. So I give him an offer, and he accepts it. In order to get the car from his house to the highway, it's a dirt road with trees. We call the flatbed from the auto club. They put the car on the flatbed, and I'm on the running board, and we're moving trees back and forth so the car can get through. I take it to my mechanic, who happens to be in Glen Ellen and loves old cars, and I said, "We got it running in the guy's garage, but we didn't drive it." I said, "I'd like you to check the car out." And I bought it, of course, and brought it home. We used that car was in the 4th of July parade here once, at least, maybe twice. We had a good time with it. Came time to sell it. I've been a docent at the Blackhawk Museum for 10 years or so. And Don Williams, who owns most of the cars and pretty much controls Blackhawk, I asked him if he had any interest in the Model A, thinking he would say no because of all the classic cars they have and the Ferraris and the rich guys' cars. He said, "Yeah, we need a car like that in the museum. We're missing that crowd. What do you want for it?" I said, "This is X. Can I see it?" "Yes." So we drive it out to Don, and he buys the car. It ends up in the lobby of Blackhawk for 2 years. Then he sells it at the Bear Jackson auction, which is a major auction in January in Scottsdale. He sells it to a phone bidder from Finland for $48,000. That's the highest priced Model A wagon I ever knew. I made some money when I sold it to Blackhawk. I didn't make that kind of money, but he knows how to do that. One of my favorite cars in the book, and it even says that as you read it, is the 1960 Chevrolet Corvair. And I call it the $6 Corvair. I was working at Porsche Audi, and when they hired 3 of us, they hired 6 people to start the distributorship and sales and service in Los Angeles. The building wasn't done. So they said, "Why don't you guys prove to us that you're good at what you do? Go sell cars for 2 months." So I ended up at a dealer in Harbor City, which is south of LA. Working one day, a 25-year-old guy shows up, articulate, educated, nice guy, driving this just awful old Corvair, smoking. And he comes in and he knows more about the Porsches than anybody in the store. He knows all about it. He tells me he came by the night before and saw this 911S, whatever it was, and he decided that was the car. He came back. It was my turn that morning to wait on him. He says, "Any chance I can drive it?" I said, "Well, how serious are you?" He says, "I'm very serious." So we pulled out of the showroom. We go on a 5-minute drive, and he comes back and says, "I'll take the car. I'll pay cash. I'll give you $500 now. Be back tomorrow with a cashier's check." So he comes back tomorrow. has the money. We sell him the car. He says, well, I'm not sure what to do with the Corvair. And the manager says, well, we sure don't want it. And I said, I'll buy it for $50 because I made a good commission on the Porsche and I can afford to get rid of $50. Then the fun started. I decided, see if I can sell it for $6. $6. So there's a gas station near my house that you can put cars for sale of one or two. And I put a sign on the Corvair, runs radio, $6. No interest. There were free one-line ads in the local paper, the Pasadena Star-News. And so for 2 weeks I had Corvair runs $6. No interest. My friend Glenn said, I know who might buy that car. I says, who's that? He says, I've got this friend who's a doctor at the Hoag Hospital in Newport Beach. And he drives less than a mile from his house to the hospital in a very nice Mercedes. And the Mercedes gets banged up all the time. And he's just looking for some kind of a crappy old car he can drive to work. And he's got a really great sense of humor. So we get together. He buys the car for $6. And we write up a full report. He got 2 years out of it. 2 years out of it. All right. The next car, Rolls Royce. What am I doing with a Rolls Royce? When I was in high school, I was a part-time chauffeur, I guess, for a wealthy lawyer in town who had a beautiful 1938 Mulliner-bodied Rolls Royce limousine with the jump seats and the division window and all the jazz. And I took he and his wife and another couple to various places in L.A. He would pay me at the very beginning. I had to wear a dark suit, and he gave me gloves and a little hat, and I looked like a real chauffeur, right-hand drive Rolls. And he knew he was an alcoholic. That's why he wanted me to drive, because in the back was champagne and wine for the 2 or 4 of them. And they go to the music center, or they go someplace, and I go where the other chauffeurs were and meet with those guys who were an interesting group of people. And then a couple of years later, he sold that car. And he bought a 1954 Rolls-Royce Silver Dawn, which is a very common car made after the war, like Bentleys. And I still chauffeured he and his wife in that car for a while. Well, at age 49, Ed died very suddenly. And a month later, his widow writes me a note saying, Bill, I don't know what he paid for the car. I have no idea. Would you come and take the car and take it to various places to see what it's worth? So I did that. I took it to 2 Rolls-Royce dealers and some independent dealers, and I brought her the bids back. She says, well, whatever the low bid was, she'll sell it to me for a little bit less than that. And I said, you know, I still can't afford it. I'm 27 years old, and I don't have the money. And then she looks at me right in the eye, and she hands me the keys, and she says, Bill, take the damn car and pay me when you can. So how do you turn that down? Duh. So I took the Rolls Royce. I sold 2 cars I owned, added up some savings. I was still short. I have a friend who's a scion of the Barnum and Bailey circus family. I went to him and said, Glenn, I need some money to pay her off and get the car and the pink slip and all. So he loans me money. I pay him off a little bit over 2 years. And now I'm under 30 years old driving a Rolls Royce. You do get service better at parking lots. You do get service better at restaurants. People want more tips, I guess. But I had a wonderful time with the Rolls. And you have to read the story in the book on how I sold it. Because I sold it in a most unusual way, a very creative way. And I'm very proud of what I did, although it could be a little bit against the law. Anyway, 2 more cars. The Toyota 2000 GT, I mentioned before, they made so few of them. And when I was at Toyota as a curator of the museum, they gave me a list of the 50 that were sold in America and who owned them. And my job was to get them all together, get a list, and publish everybody's name to everybody else for parts and service and make a club. One of the owners was in Los Angeles. I called him up. He says, well, I'm thinking of selling the car. Please come look at it. I need to talk to somebody here. So I go to his house in Hancock Park, which is near Beverly Hills. Beautiful home, this Toyota 2000. It's the yellow one in the picture down here. He had multiple sclerosis. He couldn't drive it anymore. He was driving a car with hand controls. And we're out in the garage looking at it, and he's pointing to the bedroom window. He says, that's my 18-year-old son's room. I was saving the car for him. He's not a good kid. He's going to get in trouble. This is the worst thing I could do is give him the car. I want to sell it. So I go back. I said, well, I'm just here on behalf of Toyota. I can't say I can buy it or not. I'll go get permission or not. So I went to Norm, the head of Toyota, and told him the story. He says, we have the best Toyota 2000 in the world that was restored by Phil Hill, the race car driver who also had a restoration shop. We put $200,000 in that car in early 80s. The car was perfect. So Norm says, I don't need another one. Go ahead and make a deal. So I bought the car and brought it home, and we kept that car about a year, and I sold that car to a Toyota collector dealer in Florida, sight unseen. That was his 7th Toyota 2000. He now owns 15 of them. Now, in the book, it talks about I owned $1 million Toyota. 2 years ago, 2 of these cars sold for $1 million. 2 months ago, one of the original 4 race cars sold for $2.5 million. A Toyota 2000 in average condition, which this car was, is now a $400,000 to a $500,000 car. So the question is, should I accept it? The answer is no, because I have to sell that to buy the next car, and I don't keep cars that long. The last car is a Morgan Drophead. Morgan Drophead is not on the car list. That's surprising. My wife's favorite car is a Morgan Drophead. We went to England in 1995, and I wanted to go through the Morgan factory. So we went one day to the Morgan factory. It happened to be a Friday, and Peter Morgan was there. We saw him drive in with his 2 old decrepit dogs, bring them in the office. That was the day that he signs paychecks by hand. The cars are made by hand. This is an amazing company. It's over 100 years old. It was family owned until 2 years ago. Now it's privately owned. But we went through the factory. We came back to America, joined the Morgan Club, went to their fancy convention in Cambria, and Suzanne and I looked around, what model Morgan do we want? Well, we wanted a Drophead, which is a fancy word for convertible. And in my job, I traveled in spurts. Every 3 months, I'd make a national tour going to something. And I could go where the Morgan dealers were. So I went around the country to the 5 or 6 Morgan dealers looking for a Drophead. Could not find one. But in Santa Monica, there's a guy that has a Morgan dealer. He's still there. He's the biggest in the country. He had one in the back of the used car lot with a cover on it, 4 flat tires. The interior was gutted. The top was missing. But the bones of the car, kind of a strange color, but the bones were good. And I asked Dennis, who owned it, says, can I take the car to my MG mechanic and have him check it out mechanically? Absolutely. So we did that. We flatbedded it to the MG mechanic. The guy said, this car is really good underneath. It just needs refurbishing. So I'll go back to Dennis and say, all right, I want you to put the tires on, find somebody to do the upholstery in the top, and they come up to a price. So we did that, and I bought the car after it was done. We took it the next year to Cambria, and with that car we won first in class in the Drophead class. I had it up here for about 5 years, and 5 years ago, or maybe a little more now, I sold it to a Morgan collector in San Jose. He still has it. Mine was the first Morgan, now he has 4. So it's contagious, I guess. The last car, Volkswagen Thing. Do you all know what a Volkswagen Thing is? I bought one brand new that's in the book, totally on impulse. That's not the car I'm talking about. The one I'm talking about is my last one. I've had 5 of them. There's a website called Samba, which is just for Volkswagen people. And it's anything related to parts, cars, whatever, national. I got on Samba looking for a VW Thing. Found one in Sacramento. Really nice car, nice history, nice guy. Buy the car, bring it here, have it a year or so, had my fun, want to make a little money maybe, and I put it on Samba where I bought it. I get a couple of hits, one from Vermont, and this guy calls me up from Vermont. He says, send me some more pictures. So I did. He says, okay, calls back, I'll buy the car. I'm going to send a transport truck to come out and get it, and it'll be there Wednesday or Thursday. Fine. So the great big truck pulls up in front of our house, would hold 10 or 12 cars. We put the thing on it. He goes off to Vermont. A week later, the man calls me up and says, I'm very disappointed. I don't like the cars, and it's my fault, not yours. I said, what's wrong? He says, There's some rust around the battery, and the headlight lenses don't match. That to me is not too serious. He says, I want to send the car back to you in California. I will pay the $1,500 to send it back. I want you to sell it, and when it's all sold, you can keep $500. I said, I'm not going to do that. If you send the car back and somebody comes to drive it and they run over a kid or wreck the car, whose fault is that? I won't get near that. So I'm not going to touch it. Have a nice day. And don't hear from him. The car was on Samba by him about 6 months ago at a higher price than he paid me, so he's fine. Okay, we're going to change subjects a little. I worked at Honda in the sales training department, was part of the advertising department, and we used our advertising outside company for lots of things, and Honda still does. If you go back to the 50s and 60s, there was kind of truth in advertising where people had slogans. Cadillac was the standard of the world. Buick was, when better automobiles are built, Buick will build them. Chrysler was the forward look. Pontiac had a wide track. And Chevrolet had a great one. Baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet. How American is that? Well, now what do you get? 0% down, 0 security deposit, $2,000 rebate, no payment for 90 days, yada, 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 yada. There's nothing about the car. It's just a deal. So I came up with some advertising slogans that will never, ever be used, but they're honest slogans about the cars. For instance, Alfa Romeo. We put the fun in dysfunctional. Fiat. First in automotive trauma. Edsel. Remember the Edsel? Yes. Edsel. Drive an Edsel and drink alone. Ferrari. Weapons of cash destruction. Lincoln. Hanging on like a loose tooth. Toyota Camry. The automotive equivalent of a toaster. Does everything it's supposed to do. You can ignore it. It's probably the best machine ever built, but it's boring. Here's the last one, Yugo. If you buy a Yugo, nothing else as bad can ever happen to you again. Okay. Other chapters in the book are my 10 favorite cars of all time. Pretend I'm a gazillionaire and I like you a lot, and Rafe, I'm going to buy you any 10 cars you want, any year, any car. They'll all be restored, they'll all be perfect. I'm going to buy them, I'm going to insure them, I'll put gas in them, I'll maintain them. But you can only have one of each car. You can't have 10 Ferraris, you can't have 10 Bugattis, you can't do that. So my favorite 10 cars are in there. And then I asked 15 of my car buddies to give me their, one is Jim Stroop, who's not here tonight, who's a hot rod builder in town. Jimmy gave him his. My mechanic, Bob Norbaum, he wanted a Doble steamer as one of his. My brother wanted a fire truck as one of his. So we have an interesting selection. I hope you've enjoyed the time here. I have. Thank you for coming. We had Warriors games. We had President Biden talking, and we had hot weather. But I'm glad you're here. If you buy the book, and I hope you do, I have a suggestion. Read the back cover first. Okay. Read the inside cover second, the preface. And then read the book in the order it's written. I think you'll enjoy it. That's all I've got. I'm open to questions and comments. It's been an interesting ride. Out of the 100 cars, there's 33 different makes. And I'm still buying and selling. I was talking to a guy this afternoon about another car already. So Suzanne's been wonderful about the hobby, but there's an article in one of the Porsches I bought. I asked the man why he was selling it. He said, it's the California divorce law. I said, what's that? He says, under the California divorce, I'm allowed 5 cars. This is the 6th car. I can afford the car, I can't afford the divorce, so I've got to sell it. So the California divorce law, I keep my cars to 5. They all have to run. They can't be embarrassing. They can't be parked on the front lawn. And I have a lift in my garage to put the cars on, and I rent a garage around the corner for another one. But I can't imagine having more of 5 of anything. I don't want 5 goldfish. I mean, I just don't want 5. Anyway, that's all I have. It was great to see you. we're going to sell the books right here. I'll autograph them if you want to. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks, Group.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
All right.
Wonderful.